It is 2 in the morning, somewhere off a cold coast in the winter of 1852. You are asleep inside a wooden ship. Then a sound rips through the hull. Every sailor on Earth knows it. The grind of rock against timber. No radio, no life jackets, no rescue helicopter. And like most sailors of your century, you never learned how to swim. So what exactly are you supposed to do now? As it turns out, quite a lot. First, understand how ordinary this moment was. In the 1850s, official records counted more than 1,000 wrecks every year around the British Isles alone. A shipwreck was not a freak event. It was weather. If you worked at sea long enough, the sea eventually came for your ship. And most ships did not die out in the open ocean. They died close to land, sometimes within sight of the lights of home, which makes the swimming thing even stranger. Many sailors refused to learn on purpose. They believed swimming would only stretch out the drowning. Better, they said, to go quickly. But nobody planned to drown quietly. Job one was keeping the ship alive, and that meant pumping. Wooden ships leaked even on a good day. Now, with a hole in her belly, every free hand threw itself onto the pump handles, hour after hour, in shifts, until palms bled. Crews sometimes pumped for days. Whole voyages were finished by exhausted men pumping the ocean back into the ocean, one clank at a time. Job two was making her lighter. Cargo went over the side. Cannons went over the side, and if she kept settling, you took an axe to the masts and cut them away. There is even a word for a dying ship's floating cargo: jetsam. Whatever was jettisoned, thrown, to keep her alive a little longer. If the hole could be reached, sailors had one more trick, a strange and brilliant one. They took a spare sail, stuffed it with rope fibers and wool, and dragged it right underneath the ship. The pressure of the sea sucked the canvas into the hole and sealed it. A bandage pressed on from the outside. They called it Fothering. In 1770, that exact trick saved Captain Cook's Endeavour after a reef tore her open off Australia. The ship limped to shore, and history kept its explorer. While half the crew fought the water, someone had to fight to be seen. Because there was no mayday, but there was a language of distress, and every sailor could read it. A cannon fired once a minute, the flag flown upside down, and after dark, a blue flare burning on the deck. Every signal translated to the same 3 words: "We are sinking." Then you waited to find out whether anyone was watching. Now came the hardest decision at sea. When do you abandon ship? Because here is what nobody tells you. The lifeboats were often the more dangerous option. For most of history, ships carried nowhere near enough boats for everyone aboard, and launching one from a tilting deck into a heaving sea could kill you faster than the wreck. So when a ship struck close to shore, crews often did the opposite of jumping. They climbed up into the rigging, above the waves, where they lashed themselves to the mast with rope. And there they hung, sometimes all night, soaked, frozen, waiting for the storm to lose interest or for help to come. Sometimes help really did come. From the beach, Coast Guards kept mortars and rockets that could throw a line out over the surf, straight across a stranded wreck. One by one, survivors rode a canvas sling down that rope to the sand. It was called the breeches buoy, because you sat in it like a giant pair of trousers. And in 1824, Britain founded a volunteer lifeboat service. Ordinary villagers rowing out into storms that everyone else was running from. In 1838, a lighthouse keeper's daughter, named Grace Darling, rowed through a gale with her father to pull 9 survivors off a half-sunken steamer. She became one of the most famous women in Britain. That lifeboat service still exists. Its volunteers have saved more than 140,000 lives. But the deepest question aboard a sinking ship was never technical. It was moral. Who gets the boats? 1852. The troop ship Birkenhead strikes an uncharted rock off South Africa with over 600 people aboard. Her boats can carry barely a third of them. The soldiers, many of them teenagers, are ordered to form ranks on the deck. And they do. In darkness, in silence, while the ship breaks apart underneath their boots. Every woman and every child aboard survives. Most of the men never reach the shore. Sailors came to call it the Birkenhead drill. You know it by 5 words. Women and children first. That is the legend. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. In 2012, 2 economists studied 18 shipwrecks spanning a century and a half. More than 15,000 people. What actually happened when ships went down? The result? Women survived at roughly half the rate of men. Crew members did better than passengers, and the captains, quite often, did best of all. As for the captain going down with his ship, some truly did, standing on the bridge to the end. But it was an ideal, not a law of nature. Women and children first was never the rule of the sea. It was the exception. It happened when a strong commander demanded it. Mostly, it did not happen at all. The honest phrase for a normal shipwreck was the other one. Every man for himself. And sometimes it went darker still. 1816. The French frigate Medusa runs aground off West Africa. The officers claim the boats for themselves. Around 150 people are herded onto a makeshift raft. And then the tow ropes are cut. 13 days later, rescuers find 15 of them alive. The rest were lost to fighting, to thirst, to the sea, and to things the survivors could barely speak about afterward. On other wrecks, sailors broke into the rum stores and drank, so the end would find them numb. Some officers guarded the boats with pistols. A shipwreck did not build character, it revealed it. And yet, through all of it, people kept doing small, stubbornly human things. They prayed. They sang hymns into the wind. They tied their children to hatch covers and floating spars, trusting wood a little further than arms. Some went below to write farewell letters, folded into bottles and dropped into the sea. A few of those bottles actually reached a beach, years after their writers did not. In 1912, the engineers of the Titanic stayed below decks to keep her lights burning while she sank. Not one of them survived. And her band, as you have probably heard, really did keep playing. Here is the detail that should bother you. Titanic carried lifeboats for barely half the people aboard, and that was perfectly legal. She was built to the rules of her day. 1,500 deaths later, the rules changed. Within 2 years, the seafaring nations signed a treaty with a very plain name: the safety of life at sea. Lifeboats for every single soul on board. A radio watched around the clock. And drills, so that abandoning ship became something you rehearse, not something you invent at 2 a.m. Nearly every safety rule at sea was written in someone else's saltwater. So, what did people actually do during a shipwreck? Everything they could think of. They pumped until their hands gave out. They plugged holes with sails and hope. They fired cannons into the dark, climbed the rigging, and held on. Some stood in ranks while the deck sank beneath them. Some fought their way past children to reach a boat, often the same species, just hours apart. Because a shipwreck was never really a story about ships. It was a question the sea asked of people, suddenly, in the middle of the night. Who are you when the floor disappears? And for as long as we have gone to sea, we have answered both ways at once.